Hey everyone, it's Lauren. Welcome back to another episode of Market Like a Mother with myself and Karen Cummings, founder and CEO of Radiant Marketing. Today we're talking about a myth that I am super passionate about, and this is the myth that algorithms are impossible to beat. So let's get into it.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome
Karen.
back.
How are you?
So good. How are you? I know you're super excited about today's
I am.
topic.
I am passionate.
So we're going to do a little bit of a role reversal here, and I'm going to really lean into Lauren's expertise on our myth of the day, which is that algorithms are impossible to beat. So, algorithms, are they our friend or are they our enemy?
I feel like everyone who has done anything in social media at some point or another has been like, it's the algorithm. Like this post is simply not performing well because of the algorithm. No other reason. I mean, we're all guilty of it for sure.
Yeah, well, and I should clarify. While today our conversation is heavily focused on the social side, the points that we're sharing in the framework that you provided, Lauren, I think kind of apply across all algorithms, whether
Yeah.
that's like the search algorithm, LLMs. And so, one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this today too is because of a lot of the changes that we've been seeing with algorithms and social media really evolving into a search engine. So I'm super excited to get your hot take on why this myth needs to be busted, that algorithms can be beaten, and get some tangible takeaways and tips from you on what you've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited because I feel like too, you could have, these amazing social posts and this amazing content, but if you're not working with the algorithm to an extent, you're never going to see those results that you want. So the biggest thing I always tell people is that at this current point at where we are, social media is a search engine. It's totally become a search engine.
Mm-hmm.
Even the younger generations, they said Gen Z is turning to TikTok as their first choice of search engine over Google, over Yahoo, like over Bing, like any of these platforms. So I think that's really, really interesting. And that's, something that we've seen just really develop over the past few years. And again, because of it, posting on social media has become such a different thing than just posting on Instagram and including a fun few hashtags. It's really about optimizing the same way for SEO that you would now for a Google search. So that's an interesting change that's very new, just in the past few years.
Yeah, and I think people can get really frustrated with algorithms, right? Because they change fairly constantly. And a lot of times, and you've likely seen this, and I know we're going to talk about some specific examples, but when an algorithm does update, there's a chance that everything that's been working for you up until that point is going to shift and change. And a lot of the content might become more hidden, or there might be things that surface that weren't before. But I know that, speaking with a lot of business owners over the years, and especially more recently, I think there's a lot of time being spent on trying to like crack the code.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, they're getting away from ultimately what could be what allows them to crack the code, right? Which
Yeah,
is in the content.
absolutely. And two, something I tell everyone is that algorithms are getting smarter. So like obviously, like you said, they're changing, but they're also, given AI and kind of just how technology is evolving, like these algorithms are smarter than ever. They're not just looking at likes and comments anymore. They're, monitoring the watch time. So how long does someone actually watch your video? Like at what point in the video do they
Mm-hmm.
engage? Do they interact? Do they share? So it is interesting too, because again, like you said, they're changing, but they're changing too to be even smarter than ever.
Yeah, I like that you pointed that out, and that's one of the things that you had sent over ahead of this call too. Is that that genuine engagement, things that we're not even necessarily thinking of as like something that technology can pick up on. We're like, yeah, did they like it? Did they scroll right past it? But like, how long are they viewing? Those metrics you just shared are all important things that kind of point back to also not just what the algorithm likes, but the quality of the content and what your users are really looking for. So we have a lot of people frustrated by the algorithms. You're giving us a light at the end of the tunnel with the framework that you provided. So I want to just kind of briefly overview the 4 keys to working with the algorithm, and then I'd love for you to break down each of those keys for us. So
Absolutely.
first, we have format your content technically correct. You want to have a rhythm, and you want to prioritize high quality, authoritative content. And lastly, connect emotionally with your audience. Before we
Yes.
dive in, which of these 4 do you feel is most challenging for you?
Ooh, I would say the rhythm. I mean, I think consistency is
Mm-hmm.
hard for everyone. And it's kind of learning what you could commit to in a way that, still is rewarding the algorithm. Obviously, it's monitoring how consistent you are. And I think everyone wants more is more. I wish I could be posting 4 really great quality videos a day, but it's kind of, you have to come to terms with, can I follow all of these, keys to work with the algorithm and still produce content, of that quantity. So for me, like that looks like 1 a day. But again, it's kind of, that rhythm is hard to find for everyone, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I know we'll talk a little bit when we get to that one about some specific recommendations there. But first, format content technically correct. So algorithms are really rewarding content that's formatted properly for the platform. So tell me a little bit more about what does formatting properly or correctly for the platform mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you have to think of these platforms, these social platforms now as search engines. So things like keywords, all of these, these technical things are very important, but every platform also prioritizes and rewards its own kind of technicalities. So a big thing now is editing within the app. So if you're posting an Instagram reel, Instagram Reels prefers that you're doing the editing in the app. It's able to detect that. And that includes, text overlays on screen. Instagram Reels is pulling your text overlays and using them for SEO to determine the topic of your video. The music is being, pushed out to people who maybe have engaged with that previous audio or audios by, the same artist. So all of these things, if you're editing them in a third-party platform and simply uploading them, a couple of years ago, that would have been fine. But now, given that these platforms are kind of evolving into a search engine, that doesn't fly anymore. And I think that's where, there's a lot of frustration for people too, because you're having to do this in each platform. So, if you're posting an Instagram reel, you're doing it in Instagram Reels, you're doing it in TikTok, you're doing it in YouTube Shorts. But I can't stress enough to people that this, to me, feels like one of the most important parts, because again, you could have a phenomenal video that you spent hours on, but if you're not uploading it in ways that helps you work with the algorithm, again, it's not about beating it, it's about working with it, that video is not going to go anywhere. These platforms need to be able to detect who your video is for and what's it about, so they could push it out accordingly. Because the way that the algorithms also work is it kind of gauges how much it's going to push your video out based on maybe those first 100, 200 people that it pushes it out to. So you want TikTok to be pushing it out to an audience that is going to like and interact with your video. If it's a cooking video and it's pushing it out to, people who are engineers and like to watch educational content, they're not going to interact, and the algorithm's going to detect that that's not a good video. So this technicality is very, very, very important.
Yeah, another piece that you had mentioned, and I know there's been some more recent changes around too, is the hashtag piece. So what's your advice on hashtags? And does this vary across platforms?
I would say it's getting to be more standard practice across all platforms, but it's funny because I remember when Instagram first came out, the best practices for it was the more, the better. Like I look at my early Instagram posts and I had like 25 hashtags. It was like hashtag art, hashtag Instagram, hashtag like girl life, like,
Was
all
there
of that.
even a description, or was it just a list of 40 hashtags back in the day?
It was 40 hashtags and it worked. Like Instagram, like it worked, now. So in actually just this past year in 2025, the new standard across platforms has been 5 hashtags, and TikTok even recently limited where you cannot put more than 5 hashtags on a video. So again, it's really important that you're not just kind of posting hashtags to like spam it. It's usually you want to do like one local or one geography based, one related to your niche, one related to your industry as a whole, maybe one that's trending, and one even specific to you. Like having your own branded hashtag is important too. So you have to be very pointed and careful. And again, that's something that's evolving, but we've, that change just came about this year, even that TikTok will now cap you at 5 hashtags. So it's about being, purposeful and again, feeding the algorithm to identify your best audience, basically.
So, Lauren, what is your all-time best performing hashtag?
That's a funny one. I've found that, so I obviously do travel content outside of my work at Radiant. And I used to think that I'd have to do like hashtag travel, hashtag wanderlust, travel life. But the best one that always works for me is just like hashtag solo female travel. And that one, no matter what, always gets me the most engagement. I think it's like it's niche, but it's still broad enough. You know what I mean? And it, obviously there's a really big solo female travel community on there. So I feel like that always helps bring me right to my audience right off the bat, which is great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah.
And then just to kind of backtrack too on your in-app editing piece, I know you had shared a metric prior to starting this conversation about how engagement jumped 60% because Instagram can now read the content and recommend it better. So that's a huge improvement. So like you said, this is such a critical piece. If we're not taking this technical step, then we might be missing out on some real viral type of content.
Yeah, and just a little tip too, because it could seem like a beast to obviously do all of this editing and creating all these separate videos for different platforms. My best advice for people is to create kind of your raw video, maybe in a third party outside of it, whether that's CapCut or, you're editing on your laptop, and basically just export that raw file to all of these platforms you want to upload to, and then do the editing. So you could still kind of save yourself some of that work of editing fully from scratch. But again, when it comes to like adding the captions, the overlays, the filters, the transitions, all of that once you want to be an app. But I do know it's
Yeah.
easier said than done.
Well, and I mean, that's a great time to shout out Radiant as well, where, you can engage an agency like Radiant from a strategic standpoint to kind of guide that content. And we do execution and implementation as well. So we can manage that piece you just outlined. But that might be where you partner up then with like a marketing intern or assistant, more entry level, to manage the volume and that in-app editing. If we're, setting the strategy in a solid way and the content itself is really targeted to the right audience and the goals, needs, desires, all that good stuff, then having someone on your team that can manage that piece will definitely lighten the load for you as if you're a solopreneur or a small team. And that might be where you turn to, interns or assistants to support that process. Okay.
Yeah,
moving into
absolutely.
our second
Yes.
step, or key rather, is have a rhythm. So now we all know the deep dark secrets of Lauren's challenge around rhythms. No.
Yes.
But consistency really helps the algorithms learn who your content is for and how to deliver it. And obviously, like, there's a volume aspect to this, but it's not always just about posting more. So you don't necessarily have to post every day, right? But you do need to have a rhythm. So what's striking a good balance there? Does this vary by platform? And what have you seen to be the most successful?
Absolutely. I think people don't realize how important the rhythm is, because these algorithms do detect if you're showing up on a consistent cadence, and they reward the creators that do. And that's something we've seen since the beginning. I tell people, if you could start with once a week, and if you could commit to once a week, that's a great place to start. But again, you want to do it in a consistent rhythm. So maybe that's every Friday you commit to, I'm going to post a video across all platforms on Fridays. Of course, these algorithms will always engage quantity as well. The goal, if you have to think of their bottom line, is the longer they could keep people on the app, the more successful they are as a company. So for creators that are putting out high volumes of content, they're always going to be rewarded and their videos are going to be pushed more. But again, you don't want to sacrifice the quality of your videos, or even the technicalities of these videos being optimized for the sake of quantity. So as long as you're able to commit to a somewhat consistent rhythm, that's going to help you out. But what you don't want to do also is, go 3 months posting once a week and then decide you're going to take a month off. The algorithm does not like that. I've noticed even, I could say pretty much, maybe with the exception of 2 days, I've posted a video on TikTok every single day for over probably the past 3 years now, even sometimes multiple times a day. And as silly as it sounds, the days that I've missed a day and then logged back in the next day to post, that video's engagement has always been significantly lower right off the bat. So again, these algorithms do reward that consistency.
Well, and I'm curious too, and you maybe have some insights on this, but I think what you just said reinforces the fact that once you've established a cadence, you have to stick with it. So rather than, starting big and dwindling down, like, commit with that lower frequency and then like ramp up if you're like, hey, this is manageable, easy, I want to add in another one, versus like going backwards from that. I was thinking too with the posting, I think we have a client that recently said that, the algorithms are all about feeding the beast, which you kind of said, yes, like, you do want to have high quantity. But to your point, I think quantity still can only take you so far if you're missing, this third and fourth piece here. So the third one being prioritize high quality authoritative content, which again, really just like search, and the EEAT, framework, algorithms on social really favor expertise, credibility, and content that demonstrates real value, which is measurable through engagement, right? So tell us, and maybe give an example too of, like, in the past, a piece of content you pushed out that you might have done because you're like, I got to get a piece of content out. And then you see like, yep, this wasn't aligned. I knew it wouldn't hit. It was a flop or something, compared to that high quality authoritative content.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this relates to like knowing your niche. That's obviously a really important part
Hmm.
of social media. And you want your niche to be something that you're educated in, that you're able to provide expertise to the world. So, for Radiant, again, that's us sharing marketing tips. For me, it's sharing my travel insights and everything like that. And eventually your audience will grow to expect that expertise from you. And again, the algorithm rewards people that are, sharing real high quality information, educational things, just the way that Google does too. Like you said, it's, really prioritized. I definitely have been guilty of kind of switching out of my niche if I need a quick video, whether that's like,
Hmm.
me doing a day in the life that's really not me providing any value to my audience. I'm not giving any advice. I'm not giving any tips. And like, of course, those videos flop. In my mind, I'm like, well, I'm feeding the beast. I'm getting content out. I'm
Hmm.
making sure I get my like daily posts for the algorithm. But it's like, if you're not if you're not providing value to your audience, like it's, the algorithm is not going to care. So I think an important thing to know is that like when you're choosing a niche and you're deciding what you want to share on social, it should be something that you're confident in. It should be something that you really feel like you're well versed in and you have something to provide your audience.
Yeah, we do this with our clients too. We call it our brand pillars, right? So kind of those
Mhm.
core content themes that you want to really become well known for, you have expertise or experience in, and then you can build out your sort of subtopics from there. So that's social, that's blogging, that's podcasting, that's really kind of across all content channels. But I think what you just said is so important. Like there might be times where you kind of do a caveat to that. Maybe social is not the place to do that, but say you want to
Right.
do a culture share or something like a day in the life. I mean, I would watch that, Lauren. I want to know what a day in life
Thank
of
you.
Lauren looks like.
You were probably my one like on that video.
Yeah. But yes, high quality authoritative content. This has never changed over the
Yeah.
years, right? I mean, maybe there's been those like black hat sort of tactics, but that like anything is only temporary wins. Like the long term sustainable success comes from really providing value, which also connects to our fourth and final key, which is connecting emotionally with your audience. So valuable content should do this, but you really can't hack emotion, right? So if your audience doesn't care, the algorithm won't either. So maybe if you would share a few examples of like some emotionally charged content that you've shared that worked really well, and then kind of speak to this more generally from an emotional standpoint for the algorithms.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I get into it, something I wanted to point out too is this kind of the way we were talking about these themes that never change. Like you said, the having high quality content, the connecting with your audience. This reminds me back to episode 1, which just officially came out today. But that, there's these marketing themes and pillars. Like, we like to think that social media is moving so fast and it's evolving, but there are these key pieces that never change. So I like to kind of think that this one, connecting with your audience, this is something that has always been a key pillar of marketing. It just obviously looks a little different in terms of social. And something that I was shared when I first started social media, I'm obviously well connected with a lot of the influencers in my community. Someone compared it to baking, and that has like, I've never been able to stop thinking about it. So if you think of all of these as an ingredient, as if you're baking a cake, if you
Mm-hmm.
miss one ingredient, like your cake is not going to rise in the oven and it's not going to be good. So connecting with your audience, like this high quality content, the technicality of it, these are all pieces that you need to bake a dish. And again, without one of these pieces, it's not going to be successful. So like I would say like the connecting with your audience is an important one. Of course, like you said, you can't hack emotion. And a lot of people turn to social media content for emotion. They want to laugh. They want to
Yep.
maybe feel sad. They want to feel empathy. And that's something I've really learned has been some of my highest quality and like highest performing pieces of content has been me being vulnerable, which is really hard. And you want to
Mm-hmm.
strike the balance between not oversharing and putting yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable with what you're putting online or the emotion that you're showing, but humanizing yourself too. And I think that's really important because it's you could have a video that's technically correct, that you're speaking on a topic that you're knowledgeable about, but if you're not showing like a human aspect to it, it's not going to resonate with your audience. I did a series about a year ago now where I spoke really really candidly about when I had like a little burnout journey with being a nomad when I
Mm-hmm.
first started. My mom had to fly to Europe to come get me. I was struggling, and I never talked about it for a while because I was embarrassed. And to this day, I think that's my highest performing series of all time on TikTok. Me talking about like that raw emotion. So it's really it is rewarding to do so. You know what I mean?
Way to make lemonade out of lemons. Way
Yeah.
to way to take advantage of a low moment for yourself and
Yeah.
make it a high. I mean,
Exactly.
I think we've referenced Brene Brown's work in the past, but yes, vulnerability is always one of the best ways to connect authentically with people. And I think as we become a more like, I don't know how it's officially described, but a disconnected, connected world, the
Yeah.
more I think we crave that human touch. And so I think social is definitely no exception to that. It's so important for us to be connecting emotionally with our audience. And I love that baking comparison too. I think that kind of applies across all marketing, right? If you're missing key ingredients, then nothing is going to work as at least as effectively as possible. You might have the people that still try and are like, this is good. No, but
Yeah.
it's missing sugar.
Yeah.
um,
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, so a couple of questions. I know you gave some specific examples from your personal experience, and I really appreciate that because I think that's like the peek behind the scenes is really helpful for people that are struggling with the algorithms and trying to decide between, what types of content to post and when to post, et cetera. But I wanted to, you kind of touched on some virality too. With these kind of keys in mind, what is an example of a piece of content that, or even like a theme within this your travel theme that has gone viral, that has performed really well for you, and maybe been something that's helped to secure some of those brand deals for you, or even, potentially what's prompted the on brand show involvement?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that people love to see on social media is also people doing good. And I know that's such like a vague statement, but I think, when you're scrolling nowadays, you're met with, news articles. And so it could feel so overwhelmingly negative. So I think something that always does really well on social media is if you're able to use your expertise or use your position or use the privilege that you have to show yourself doing good or, impacting someone else's life positively. So when I look back on my videos, some of my highest performing have been, me spotlighting a small business and directly having that small business be impacted positively, whether I post a restaurant in Florence and the next week they see a really big influx and they're reaching out to thank me, kind of showing the positive side of social media, because there can be
I
so
love
much
that.
negative, is really really big. And I feel like at Radiant we're so lucky because our whole thing is like we work with brands that are in the health and wellness space and brands that win and brands that we feel like are doing good for the world. So it's
Mm-hmm.
nice too, because I feel like our clients at Radiant have so many opportunities because they're doing so much good in their community that like we could be showing that more, and those are things that people want to see more of on social media. They want to see more of that, people supporting their communities, people doing positive things and making positive impact in other people's lives.
I love that. Like, I love that the algorithm is rewarding that too. What are some quick wins that you haven't shared yet that you've seen recently for content to perform really well?
I think a big one is the keyword rich captions. So that's kind
Mm,
of a new thing, as social media is evolving into more of a search engine. And I feel like there used to be such an emphasis on these short, cute captions, like especially on TikTok, it'd be 5, 6 words. It really didn't feel like it was adding or taking away from, how viral your video went. But now that it's evolving to a search engine, you could have full paragraphs as your caption. And we're really seeing TikTok and Instagram reading these captions and using those keywords that you put in the captions to push it out to the appropriate audience. So I tell people to don't be afraid to, make a long caption, put a whole paragraph in there if you want, because if you load it up with keywords, you're going to see that quick win pretty instantly.
it's so funny. I mean, I'm just recalling, I don't know how many years ago it was that, like, especially on the Instagram side, that was the thing, those long captions, that we
Mhm.
went to short captions. Now it sounds like we're coming, kind of coming
Yep.
back to the long captions. But what is something that you've tried that worked really well that might have surprised you about the algorithm?
Mm. And it's funny because it's a personal pet peeve of mine. I hate text overlays on screen. I want to see a nice, pretty, clean video. Just,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I love like long form content. So I always love that. But the text overlays on screen, I could probably like take you right back to that first week I started doing that in my mind on TikTok. And like, I think I grew 1,000 followers in a week. Like it was such a
Mm,
simple, easy change that I was so against for the longest time, because I was like, well, my video looks great. I don't want words on the
yeah.
screen covering it up. But just, having those text overlays and having, TikTok and Instagram able to read your video, basically read a script of your video to determine who would want to watch this. It's so helpful and it's so rewarding, and it's like one of those like instant rewarding, things to switch. But yeah, I had to overcome that pet peeve.
That's so funny. I mean, it's such a good point though, especially as marketers. I feel like the aesthetic is so important to us. And while yes, there is obviously research that shows that having a clean, easy to read, all those things,
Yep.
type of assets are important. It's like balancing that with what do the algorithms want? What do people want? Like
Yes.
it might not look exactly like we want it, but it's performing really well. So as long as
Exactly.
we're aligned still on the value standpoint. Okay, so let's wrap here with a couple of reflection questions
Yes.
for our listeners. First, am I staying updated? Am I staying updated with the new social platform features and changes? So, how are you staying tuned into that? Is it through Lauren's Marketing RX that you get weekly, or are there other channels you're tuning into? Direct updates from the platforms. Is my content technically optimized for discoverability? Am I using the right hashtag mix? Am I using in-app editing? Do I show up consistently enough for my audience to recognize me, which then helps the algorithm recognize you, and helps to feed that content out to the right, initial set of individuals, like you said, that's going to engage and just kind of snowball from there. And am I sharing value and connecting on emotion, or am I just posting to fill space? I think that, like, to me, is always like speaks to the most important piece. Like, is that value there? Do you know who your audience is, so you know what that value looks like? So definitely food for thought here. Algorithm isn't impossible to beat, but it is but it's just impossible to ignore. So sorry. Yeah, like I think that is like that balance, right? That we were saying,
Yeah.
like create content with the algorithm in mind, but above and beyond that, create content with your audience in mind. So merging those two concepts, work with it by mastering both that technical aspect and the emotional side, and format smart, post consistently, share value, and connect authentically, whether that's on social, through blog, on your website, and your email. I mean, that one applies universally. And when you create content that serves people and plays by platform rules, you will grow much more significantly. So, any final thoughts, Lauren, for our listeners? Anything else we want to share?
I feel like I just always tell anyone who I've spoken to about social media is like, it's about creating content that you're proud of, that you like, but it's also appeasing these platforms. So you almost have to think of it as like, create content that, like you said, it connects with your audience, you feel good and you feel proud about. And then think of that as kind of the last step before you post it, of like, okay, now I'm going to do the technicalities. I'm going to feed the beast. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to feed these platforms and, follow and play by their rules. But I wouldn't create your content in mind, with appeasing these platforms. Make it that last step of like, okay, I've created this piece. I'm really proud of it. Now let me do those little technical things that are going to help push it out.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for sharing your specific and experienced perspective on this. I think this was a really helpful conversation. Hopefully, our listeners took some valuable insights away.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karen. This was fun.